What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again. And today, people, we are talking about the tweet that was heard around the world, where one of the narrative directors working on Destiny said, well, you know what? The Grimoire is, folklore. The underlying implication being, of course, that the canonicity of any aspect of the Grimoire is subject to their whims. Meaning that at any point in time, they can change anything they want about the lore, and well, you know what, the Grimoire was just folklore and this is the actual truth. Needless to say, that was received about as well as could be expected. Now, at the time of recording this, I'm actually a few days late to the party on this one, and Bungie's kind of issued a clarification that's kind of a backtrack, but not really. As somebody who absolutely positively adores the lore of the Destiny universe, this was kind of a last straw for me. This was my Alamo. This was my Rubicon. And this narrative director, who seems to be little more than somebody's nepotistic hire, somebody who has maybe been working at Bungie at most a year, but more likely way less, comes out and has the gall to be dismissive of the fundamental bedrock of the game's universe. One of, if not the best aspect of Destiny as a whole. More so when everything since the end of Destiny 1's life cycle has been, in no uncertain terms, complete and utter garbage. To say I was taken aback and didn't know how to approach this would be an understatement. Sure, I could and nearly did just go in and scorched earth this. I could have gone in and written a long, well-researched video absolutely annihilating anyone and everyone in charge of writing at Bungie. It wouldn't be very hard. As good for my ratings as that might have been, as enjoyable as it might have been to watch, I feel like this is one of those instances where a scorched earth approach would be more harmful in the long run. Sometimes you have to build, and sometimes you have to destroy. I think in this instance, a more educational approach is warranted. I want to explain why this happened. Why the lore community finally lost its shit. Because, with the exception of perhaps myself, the lore community tends to be way more diplomatic and forgiving of the things that Bungie does. Because their enjoyment of Destiny as a whole doesn't necessarily all come from the actual playing of the game. It's much like Warhammer 40k in that respect. You have dozens upon dozens upon dozens of books. There's video games, and then there's the miniature war games. And although there is a lot of crossover, there are large sections of the 40k community, the 40k fanbase, that have never even played any of the games. They're just fans of the lore. They're fans of, say, the Horus Heresy series. So, although I'm sure there's some catharsis to be had by violently and egregiously tearing down this writing team in the ways of old, I'm gonna try a more nuanced approach, because I don't think the writing team actually understands what Destiny is. I don't think anyone at Bungie actually understands what Destiny is, with the exception of maybe Chris Barrett. But even then, he's probably just reacting to the fan feedback. And because nobody at Bungie seems to actually know what Destiny as a franchise is, Destiny 2 continues to have identity crisis after identity crisis after identity crisis, ultimately pleasing no one, not even Activision's bank account, especially not Activision's bank account. But all is not lost, writing team, because I'm here to help you understand why the lore community categorically pushed back against this tweet and the sentiment therein. In many ways, the optics of this tweet was tone deaf to many of the issues that the lore community has had to put up with since Destiny 2 was announced. Call it the final straw that broke the camel's back. Destiny 2 was supposed to be bigger and better than Destiny 1 in every way imaginable. There was dozens of stories from the Grimoire that people wanted to see finished. The Tales of the Shadow of Yore just seemed to be starting at the end of Rise of Iron. Uldren, the Prince of the Awoken, had risen to become the Kell of House Kings, for reasons we still don't understand. Eris had disappeared, the Stranger was still time traveling, Rasputin was clearly up to something. We wanted to know more about the Stranger. We wanted to know what happened to the Queen of the Awoken. We wanted to know more about the light and the darkness, about the Hive Gods, about the Vex. Destiny had created this wholly fascinating universe and we wanted more. However, in May of 2017, it was announced in an interview with Forbes by Bungie's world lead Steve Cotton that the Grimoire was going away. But it was going away so that they could put those stories in the game. And then in June of 2017, Luke Smith, the franchise director of Destiny, had this to say about the story of Destiny 1. The Exostranger is one that always makes me chuckle a little bit, because I feel that's one character where we've actually wrapped up the arc. She gives you a sweet gun, and then dissolves, presumably off to do something else. So I feel like, of all the characters we've introduced and exited, we actually exited her effectively. But she always comes up. She always comes up, so there's obviously something to that character that piques people's curiosity. Later on in the interview, he goes on to relegate the Queen of the Awoken, one of the most badass characters in the entire franchise, to little more than cosplay. But wait, there's more! In an interview with Kotaku, Luke Smith had this to say when asked about the darkness. You know, the seminal force behind the destruction of humanity, the creation of the Hive and their gods, the opposing force to the light, the big bad we supposedly spent 3 years fighting the forces of.
First thing I have to ask you about, I saw this Game Informer article. In it you said that you guys will not be talking about the darkness today.
Correct.
Which is, or in the game, sorry, you will not be
Yeah.
talking about the darkness in the game. And your explanation was, I believe, something about how it's like not time to reveal that, or you're focusing on something else, correct? It was
Yep.
that. Tell me the truth. Is it because none of you have any idea what the
So,
darkness actually means?
I think that at a point, just totally candidly, we had no idea what
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
Straight up, we had
Good.
no clue.
I'm glad you're being candid.
Yeah, we
today.
didn't know what it was, and we for a period. I mean, for a period, we chose we were gonna lump all the races, and you see this in the tooltips in the game. Minions of the Darkness, and we had taken all the races and just said like, they'll just be the Darkness.
Okay.
But that's like not what the IP deserves. It's
Okay.
like literally not. It's
Okay.
like literally not.
I'm glad you're admitting this.
And so what we're doing with Destiny 2 is we are deliberately telling a story about
Okay.
the light and what it means to be chosen.
Okay.
And as such, like, we're in the process of like removing the term darkness from the game.
I like that.
because when we are going to talk about darkness next, we need you to know what it is and have a plan for it.
And while I actually agree that this isn't what the franchise deserves, I think the Book of Sorrows was laying out a great case for what the darkness actually was. Ultimately, I always believed it to be this personification of entropy, more of a Lovecraftian force of nature than anything else. If the Traveler is a creative force, then there too must be a destructive force. This actually makes the most sense, as two of the enemy factions actively rail against entropy. And there are references in the Grimoire about the Traveler that also reference balances and forces coming unaligned. And if we're going from a more literary standpoint, Rasputin is basically Durandal from the Marathon games copy and pasted into Destiny. I mean, they even have a lot of the same dialogue. And Rasputin may actually reference Durandal. And the reason that that's important is because Durandal, his ultimate goal was to escape the inevitable closure of the universe. But you can find out more about that in my Destiny 2 lore video, Rasputin, Mendicant Bias, and Durandal, How Rasputin's Story Will Evolve. Link in the description below. So before Destiny 2 has even come out, the lore community has been hit with no more Grimoire. We've been told that characters like the Exostranger's story has been finished, regardless of how unfinished it actually is, and that the Queen of the Awoken, quite possibly one of the most badass characters in the entire franchise, was dismissively reallocated to nothing more than cosplay. Then we're told, not only will we not find out more about the darkness in Destiny 2, but Bungie, for the longest time throughout all of Destiny 1, had no fucking clue what the titular enemy of the franchise even was. Sure, they have an idea now, but what's the likelihood it will inevitably be nothing close to what the original vision for the darkness was? The vision that was the foundation to the original lore and world building of the universe. But the lore community tends to be a lot more forgiving about this sort of thing than I am, if for no other reason than hopeful optimism. But how does that Warhammer 40k quote go again? Oh yeah, forget the power of technology and science. For so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, For in the grim dark future, there is only war. There is no peace amongst the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsty gods. In a lot of ways, this quote more than adequately describes Destiny 2. Forget the advances of Destiny 1, for much has been left behind. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grimdark future of Destiny 2, the developers don't even know or care about the lore. There's no sense of pride or achievement to be had, no stories to dive into for deeper meaning. There's only Eververse and the laughter of greedy executives. Destiny 2's story in many ways is worse than Destiny 1's, using carefully crafted cinematics to hide the fact that, all in all, nothing was really going on, and we, the protagonist of the story, was nothing more than a mute errand boy. Destiny 2 ends where Destiny 1 Year 3 ended, only with less content. The epic stories we were promised, in the form of adventures and scannables, were very hit and miss. And even the best ones never quite got as good as any of the Grimoire. There's no Visions of Pajari. There's no Book of Sorrows to be found in Destiny 2. The lore tabs on the weapons and the armor are basically expanded flavor text, or have nothing relevant to add to the lore whatsoever. And I think this left a lot of the lore community feeling outright betrayed. We were promised something, and we did not get it.
If Destiny 1 had a heartbeat, it was a nice, methodical rhythm that just kind of underpinned the entire experience.
Steady.
It was steady.
Reliable.
It supported the world. Destiny 2, this is like the heartbeat of someone who's over at Orange Theory Fitness. Boom, boom, boom. It's like a machine gun. Yeah, I think it's important to really understand that, this studio spent a lot of time world building. And I can't emphasize enough that we are now ready to tell stories in this world. Big, expansive, cinematic stories.
And the fun thing about that is that we've got this great team of writers. We have this great team at Bungie that is consistently looking at that and finding ways to take those interesting ideas and build upon them and then present them as we move forward. And I think that we're doing that a lot in D2. We're learning from listening to all the feedback we got on D1, and we're applying it
to them.
It's a great variety. I really think D2 or Destiny 2 is, it's certainly the best of our teams. And it sounds cliche. You always expect that, but I really truly think that everyone here at Bungie did the best work that they've done for Destiny 2.
I think players are ultimately going to see a wide variety of story channels, an eclectic number of outlets to see story infused throughout the game. Top to bottom, soup to nuts. There is story everywhere.
I hope people complain about how much story we have at the end of this.
Actually, that would be kind of awesome.
Yeah. That'd be the Reddit thread I'd like to read. It's just too much damn story.
Destiny 2 and Destiny 2 The Curse of Osiris have done very little to add to the overall cosmology of the Destiny universe. Like I've said a few times in various videos, Destiny 2 feels more like a previously on for Destiny 3 than an expansion of the Destiny universe in terms of lore. And even then, they get a lot wrong, or they just outright retcon it. And then we get to The Curse of Osiris. And I'm going to be honest, I'm legitimately surprised that this wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. Everything from the portrayal of Osiris and Brother Vance to the lackluster go kill one big bad Vex generic story, when they literally had all of time and space to play with, to adventures that do nothing to expand the lore, to the absence of the scannable items that was supposed to expand and replace the Grimoire, to more lore being introduced through the cash shop than the actual story of the game, to the killing off of Saint 14, to missing opportunity to opportunity to opportunity to explore things like the effect of the speaker's death on Osiris, and maybe having him come to terms with assuming the speaker's mantle, or exploring the Vex's collective consciousness, or so on and so forth. To say that this story was bad is an understatement. And then we get to Destiny's first cross-media publication, The Fall of Osiris. This comic book is plagued with the same exact issues that plague all of Destiny 2. Bad characterization. The pacing of the story gives the reader no sense of time. Days, weeks, months, years could be passing at the turn of a page, and you don't know it. This is on top of skipping over anything and everything of import, in lieu of telling us what happened after the fact, and replacing it with these poorly written character interactions that feel like they're straight out of somebody's Twilight fanfic. At Bungie, on the writing team, there seems to be, at best, what I would consider a fundamental lack of understanding for the source material. Everything around Destiny 2 leads me to the conclusion that this staff, or at least the leads of this staff, do not understand the universe they are writing for. At worst, there is what I would characterize as a blatant, egotistical contempt for the source material. These leads seem to be doing everything in their power to steer the franchise in what they think is their own direction, and not build on what came before, but dismantle it. Likely again because they don't understand it. And when faced with something that they don't understand, stupid people often choose to destroy it. When confronted at trying to guess at somebody's motivation, I tend to lead towards incompetence rather than malice. So I'll go ahead and spell it out for the writing team. If it wasn't already painfully obvious, the community is rather attached to the Grimoire. For the better part of 4 years, it served as the foundation for a large segment of the community, brought together because they loved the universe and wanted to know more. So channels like Bife, Sir Wallen, Malin Games, Bearded Grizzly, and my own popped up in service to this lore and this community. Some retelling and reenacting the lore, others piecing it together and crafting their own theories. However, for the lore community, with Destiny 2, it has been nothing but one slap in the face after another, as I've already painstakingly detailed. So when the lore community is confronted with 3 pieces of media, Destiny 2, Destiny 2 The Curse of Osiris, and Destiny The Fall of Osiris, and it seems like these pieces of media do everything within their power to retcon, mischaracterize, talk down, and basically shit all over the old lore, and in the course of doing so have nothing of substance or value to add to the universe whatsoever, and then you tell the community that the continuity of the lore that they love, the canon of it, is suspect to your whims, but this comic, this literary abortion to good taste, in fact supersedes the canon of the Grimoire, you're just asking for a fight. This is a self-inflicted wound of the highest caliber, and you deserve any and all criticism that comes your way. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The Destiny universe at its core is a far more grimdark space opera in the vein of Warhammer 40k than it is a G-rated, poorly executed, and very unfunny Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. If you haven't, I highly recommend My Name is Bife's video, Destiny, the grimdark universe you might not have heard of, and why it's awesome. Link in the description below.
Because at the end of the day, I think that what I'm trying to say is that much as Bungie won't present the grim dark element of Destiny at the forefront, I really don't want them to shy away from it either. Grimdark settings are ripe for a cornucopia of fantastic stories, with the very acknowledgement of the setting as grimdark adding subtle tones of depth and also the potential for even greater character development. A universe in conflict is one where everything is amplified. You cannot have love without war, you cannot have happiness without sadness, and having a moment of perpetual sadness running through it not only colours the universe in a very interesting tone, but also means any of those moments where Bungie does want to extend the hopeful nature of the universe only become stronger. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that give us more Destiny, but acknowledge the potential of alternative media to bring a more fleshed out version of the franchise to life. Don't be afraid to let the universe tell great stories like this, because you know what? The darkest stories of Destiny's universe have always, I think, been some of its best.
And I agree with Bife 110% on this. The universe of Destiny is defined by its darkness, by its more enigmatic characters. Characters like Osiris, who in the lore comes off as this more Voltaire meets Socrates type character. Or Dredgen Yor, the hero who falls from grace. Or Rasputin, the betrayer. Or the Queen of the Awoken, the survivor. Or the Ahamkara, literal wish dragons whose deals are often Faustian in nature. The Nine, who are puppeteers. Or Oryx, who's the apex predator who didn't have a choice. It's the kind of morally gray, philosophical storytelling found in the Grimoire that the lore community adores. Because at the end of the day, within the universe of Destiny, there really isn't a right or wrong. There's only survival, and the existential realization of humanity's place in the greater cosmos. It's very reminiscent of a quote from Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance, in the midst of a black sea of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hereto harmed us little. But someday, the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. While there is no problem with moments of levity, within the storytelling you have to remember the world your characters live in. The city has been under siege for the better part of 100 years, and it was just lifted before the invasion of Gaul. Gaul, who when he invaded butchered tens, if not hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children. Every second of every day, the world of Destiny is under threat of hive gods, cabal god emperors, Vex constructs capable of deleting entire timelines. There's the Nine, the Fallen, the Wish Dragons. There's the war between light and darkness. There's demigods that guard the city that are capable of being corrupted. The world that Destiny lives in is in a constant state of being moments away from everything. The Earth, the galaxy, the timeline, the dimension ceasing to exist. This is the sort of existential threat that Marathon, Halo, and Destiny 1 all explored in various different ways, with Destiny unfortunately relying on the storytelling within its grimoire to convey a lot of this. In a way though, that was kind of its greatest strength. People had to find these things, and it took years to tell complete stories. So, to go back to that Lovecraft quote, what built the lore community was the piecing together of disassociated knowledge. So when you dismiss the fundamental bedrock of a community, and you try to replace it with your own lesser and lacking vision for the world that that community was built on, you're going to see pushback. For the writers of Destiny that seem incapable of grasping the greater concepts of the Destiny universe, I highly recommend reading things like Lovecraft, Voltaire, A Song of Ice and Fire, the Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy series, or, your own grimoire. For those who, perhaps out of malice or thinking that they know better or who allow their ego to ruin the franchise, I highly recommend that you step down immediately. As an artist, I believe that artists are much like the very tools they use. They're an extension of them. I think it's important to check your ego, because there's always somebody better than you. Like tools, you have to use the right artist for the right job. If that tool breaks, if it wears down, or if it's incapable of performing the task at hand, then you need to set that tool aside, or it needs to be replaced, for both the sake of the artist and the art. No one wants to work with an artist whose ego will get in the way of the project. And lastly, an artist who can't perform a task shouldn't. I can draw and paint one hell of a picture, but don't ask me to carve something from marble. I wouldn't even know where to begin. In short, step up or step out. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of better writers, vastly more capable than you are, who will do a better job. That's just the nature of the beast. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.
2, 1.